It defined my entire identity. I always found so much comfort in my work that's where I would go to emotionally suppress anything that was happening around me. I'm unfinished. And I wrote the book from being unfinished and in purgatory and in that kind of transformational space. I wanted to show the messiness. I wanted to show the actual process that I'm going through, the questions that I'm asking myself versus just a finished product.
Welcome to Control Your Career. I'm your host, Julia Toothacre, your strategic career consultant, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. Each week, we explore personal decisions, workplace dynamics, and career trends that shape the way we work. Whether you're trying to grow where you are, navigate a career transition, or better understand today's world of work, my goal is to help you make informed career decisions. Today, I'm joined by Geoff Curtis. Geoff spent nearly 30 years building a career in corporate communications, eventually serving as Chief Communications Officer at Horizon Therapeutics. Today, he leads Marshall Curtis Communications, where he advises executives and organizations on communication, leadership, and change. He's also the author of Embracing Your Own Purgatory. I love the name of this book. It's a book that explores professional identity and what happens when the career you've built no longer fits the life you're living. When I learned about Geoff's work, I knew that this was a conversation I wanted to have because this is a side of career development that we just do not talk about enough. And in this conversation, we're going to be talking about professional identity, navigating major career transitions, what happens when work becomes part of your identity, and how to approach what's next when that identity begins to change. Geoff, thank you so much for being here and being a guest today.
Thank you for having me, Julia. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, this purgatory thing, we're going to get deeper into that. But there are some things I want to understand first. So you spent about 30 years or so building your career, eventually becoming Chief Communications Officer at Horizon. When you were in that role, how much did your work define who you were at that time?
It defined my entire identity. I mean, and that was a result of, frankly, just patternistic behavior throughout my entire career. I always found so much comfort in my work that's where I would go to emotionally suppress anything that was happening around me. So I kind of already knew, even as I was even early in my career, throughout middle of my career, and then when the latter part of my career, that my identity was a big thing. And it was, or I'm sorry, my work and my identity were really enmeshed with one another because it's really, I lived and breathed work. And as I said before, it was just so much comfort in doing so. And so it's hard to explain when you're actually in it until you leave it. And you start looking back retrospectively at kind of what happened throughout your entire career and really decisions you made or choices you made that really accentuated the importance of the work and the professional identity.
Yes, see, this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on, because I feel like this is a conversation that so many professionals know deep inside. Like, I think that they feel it at certain points in their career, but they don't know what to do with it because they've been trained to be a certain way and act a certain way and make decisions a certain way. And so I love that you're bringing this to light through your story and your experience. I think this is really wonderful for professionals to hear.
Yeah. And I think the thing I'll say too is that in really looking back, kind of a lot of personal psychology kind of impacted my drive throughout my career, which I think happens with a lot of professionals. I am a first generation college graduate. I always felt that I had to outwork everyone. I always felt that success was defined in a certain way. And it's almost that I always wanted to overcome something, prove myself more, do all of that. And I think that just drive alone and that psychology alone, whether it's inherent or you learn it over time, impacts even where your identity goes, because you want to strive and drive to be something that is more than you thought you could be. But I don't know, I always had somewhat of an underdog mentality, and that I knew that I could outwork everyone. And so that's what I focused on. And I think back to what I said earlier, it's probably why I found so much comfort in it, is because I knew that I was good at what I was doing, and knew that the way up the ladder was to outwork everyone. And I knew that I was good at doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this idea of success also, and what is that definition
Right.
for everyone? Because there's the societal definition of success, there's a familial definition of success. And I think, especially, I've seen with a lot of first gen college students, there's a familial push around what does it mean to be successful. And you're the first one to go, and you're the first one to have this corporate career. And so there are all these pressures put on you to succeed, to do something with your life. And then you get to this point where it's like, well, what does this even mean? And is this who I am?
That other success component as well is that, what is the structure you're stepping into from a company standpoint define as success too? So that's a little bit different from the external success and the familial success. There's structural success, and how whatever environment you step into, how they define it. And it's often by a different set of metrics than you're actually thinking about defining it yourself. And so it gets very confusing over the course of time about how those definitions start to either mesh together or don't. And that, again, increases kind of that misunderstanding of what success, you lose sight of what success actually means to you personally.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Let's take that into this big transition that you had. So you expected to move into another executive role after this big acquisition happened. We all know when the acquisitions happen, you never quite know where you're going to go, but you have an idea of what you think is going to happen. But at what point did you realize this is different? This is a different process that I'm going through now.
Well, and I think part of it was at some point I knew that my job was going to be redundant. So I knew that I was going to exit. I think that's the first thing. I knew that I needed to take some time, but like high achievers, I also knew that I had to keep myself busy. And so I immediately went into a fellowship at the University of Chicago called the Leadership and Society Initiative, which was set up to help people in my position, people who maybe already retired, define what's next. What does that next path look like? But using your expertise to impact society in a different way. And so it was really what I felt was a perfect transition to, okay, this is going to help me find out what could be next or what I want to do. Instead, it just served, and again, it was valuable. I got a lot out of it, but it also psychologically served as kind of that kicking the can down the road, and what I had always done throughout my career in kind of, how do I stay busy? How do I stay busy? How do I kind of suppress the emotion and find comfort in something that's going to keep me busy? And so when that ended, that's the time I started consulting, started my own consultancy, as you mentioned in the intro, and started doing that work. And Julia, I absolutely hated it. I mean, I didn't know why, but I couldn't find my footing in the way that I felt that I had it before. Yeah. And it just led to some pretty severe depression toward the end of that, what was 2024. And I mean, even throughout the process of the fellowship and throughout the process of forming the consultancy, I was just dealing with the big it, because I started to realize that, wow, that last 30 years, I was really tied up in this identity. And now I don't know if I will ever get that back. I fought some relevance issues. I fought a lot of different things psychologically just to understand if what to do now. What was I going to do? Am I good enough? Was I good enough at what I was doing? So all of those questions kind of entered my space, and I wasn't comfortable anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say for people listening, this is a common stage that happens. A good number of my clients right now are in that, I would say, late career stage. And in this space of trying to figure out, who am I? What's next? Nothing fits. They're not excited about applying to anything. They're not excited about starting their own business, some of them, for a lot of different reasons. That's why I laughed when you said I hated the consultancy. I'm like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
All these transitions, I think when you're not used to having them all at the same time, along with the emotional weight of everything, people do not realize the toll that it takes on your psyche and your emotions. I love that you talk about how you found comfort in the work that you were doing, because I think that that is so true, especially of high achievers. That's the escape.
Yeah.
That's where we know we are doing a good job and we can do that. And so it is this safe haven for us. And when all that gets blown up, then you're sitting there like, well, now who am I if I cannot achieve something? And what does that mean? And I think that's such a hard question for so many people.
Yeah. And I guess the wild card that I was not expecting was the relevance piece of it, and how relevance is really tied to that identity. And I mean, it can be intuitive, and it probably is intuitive to you and some of the listeners, but for me, it was just a tough match to really understand that relevance was really so tied to that identity. And there's one story I tell in the book, that I was at a conference right before I exited the company. And I had a Fortune 50 chief communications officer tell me that, after I asked, and I don't even know why I asked the question, but after I asked, said that I would be relevant for a year to 18 months after I left my corporate role. And so, I mean, I wasn't expecting to hear that, because that, as someone who is defining themselves by their job and by their relevance in an industry, that was a pretty big shock to the system. And I give credit to that person, for better or for worse, to actually forcing me or leading me to start the consultancy, because I was so fearful of that relevance going away. And to me, that was kind of that last grasp of maintaining that. How do I stay relevant? And so it was more external expectation driven than actual internal want and need, which is a terrible place to be in, really. I mean, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that this idea of relevance, I think, is something that high achievers don't like to admit, because it makes it sound like there's an ego behind it.
Right.
And I would argue, and this is for my high achievers listening, I would argue that it's not an ego thing, because the high achievers I know, including myself, it is never about ego. It is just about, I need to know that I'm doing well in this, because that's where I find my value. You think that I did a good job. I have relevance in these decisions. I'm helping the company along. I'm helping this person, succeed. I'm helping this client do XYZ, whatever the thing is. That's where I find the relevance and the joy and the, yes, I am achieving and I'm accomplishing and all of that. And so I think that's a really interesting feeling to unpack for high achievers.
100%.
I love that you mentioned that.
100%. And I like the way you just framed it too, because I really wasn't thinking about, yes, it means that I'm doing a good job at something. But also, I think where the ego part comes in, which is, again, great point, is that external expectation. because I think social media does this to everyone, right? Just particularly LinkedIn. We're always saying how we're doing great things, and that adds to kind of your relevance in the broader ecosystem with which you exist, whatever industry it may be.
Right.
And I think that feeds some of that component as well, is that, okay, if I lose this, then I'm no longer going to be tied to these 10,000 people who are following me on LinkedIn because they expect certain things. And that is a tough part. It's a battle between that as well as the, okay, here's a pat on the back for doing a good job. And to me, it's an interesting, as you said, a very interesting thing to unpack, to understand both sides of that feeling.
Yeah. Okay, I want to dig into the identity piece a little bit more, because you said that you realized so much of your identity was connected to the work that you're doing. So I want you to kind of talk to professionals who are in it right now. What should they be looking for? Like, what are some of the signs of, hey, we might be a little too connected to our career and work? What do they need to be looking for there?
How often do you think of your job outside of the office? How often is your mind constantly consumed by work? How do you describe yourself? Things like that, I think, are the big things. For me, it was those small things that don't seem like a lot, but compound into really big things. Missing family events just because I had to work, or because the work took priority, letting friendships lapse, those types of things that just you think are little things at the time. But it was that comfort, Julia, that was really driving me, that I would rather do and miss certain things, even though the work probably could have waited. So those are kind of the warning signs that always pop up for me, even when I'm talking to people now, is that how much are you really letting go when you leave the office, or you leave your home office, or whatever it may be? And is your mind consumed? I mean, I used to joke that, and I think I wrote about it in the book, that when I would go on vacation with my wife, she gave me hours where I could check email. And when I wasn't, my phone was locked in the safe. And that's kind of sad if you think about it. I mean, I smile and laugh. We can laugh about it now, but my wife always knew that, and she tells me this to this day, that she knew that the job is the priority. And when you get into that territory, that's a big warning sign, and something to really look out for when it starts creeping into the family time, the vacation, the friendships. I'm doing a lot of work right now in rebuilding friendships, because it is, the job took the priority. So I know that was a long-winded way to answer this, but I want to show through example too, so people can really see and grasp and say, okay, I need to back off a little bit. And I think one promising thing, I just spoke with a college student, a junior in college, rising senior, and I didn't know her, met her about a month ago, and we were having a conversation, and she said, I want to go into this career, but Geoff, I also love living life, and I want to live life too. And I said, you know what? You can do absolutely both. You can be successful in your career, and you can live life. And I share that because I was taken aback that somebody that young and early in a career was thinking about how to already separate the two. And I was more envious than probably happy for her, and saying, I wish that I could have done that. I wish that I could have had that passion for living life outside of the job. And I didn't. And so if people can get to that point and start to bifurcate those things, more power to them. And I think you're going to be happier even in your role that you have.
Yeah. Okay, Geoff, you're touching on something that we cannot go down a rabbit hole on, but I think it's important to at least give some space to. So I think this is a common complaint that hiring managers are having of Gen Z, and managers are having of Gen Z, which is exactly what you said. My students right now, I'm teaching a college level career course, and they are the same way.
Okay.
Every single one of them have talked about, I want to live life. I want balance. I'm not willing to, sell my soul to the corporation is the message that I'm getting. And I think it's so refreshing to see. But that transition, I think it's going to be a rough road for that generation. I think for a number of years until the older generation understands what they're trying to do. And some get it and some don't, but we're hearing it splash all over the news right now. And I'm like, do not put Gen Z down because they're trying to learn from their parents and grandparents' mistakes of how to balance work and life.
Right. And I would say, I hired as well in my last role. And I would say that I probably raged against that too, because I was not yet in the space where I understood how important that balance was. And I think you're exactly right. The onus is on us, on Gen X, on some baby boomers, on millennials, older millennials, all of those generations to understand that when you get to that point where you realize that the balance was important, you'll start to understand the needs of the upcoming generation. So it's really our responsibility to be the voice and be the teacher to say, hey, after 30 years or after 40 years, the I wish list is very long. I wish I would have list is very long. And I don't want that to happen for others who come after us. And so agree with you. It's really on us to kind of be the teachers as much as we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to go back. I got a little sidetracked with the Gen Z thing because that's such a hot topic right now and I'm teaching them too. But I want to go back to the signs.
Yep.
And I want to give an example from my perspective because I feel like my perspective is not widely discussed, but needs to be among high achieving women. So when I was working full-time, high achiever, doing all the things, and we decided to have a child, got pregnant, did all the things, had that baby. And I am not somebody that was like, my life's goal is to be a mother.
Mm-hmm.
Not my lot in life. Now, I love my child to death, would not change anything. But I am so and was so career focused that I was like, I'm probably not going to be a good mom. And I didn't feel like I was a good mom because I'm like, I don't know anything about babies. I don't know anything about kids. I was completely out of my comfort zone of achieving. And so similar to your story, I leaned into work at certain times because it was comfortable and it was easier
than
having to figure out this baby and what it needed and what it wanted and feeling like I'm not enough for this child because this is not something that comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
And I'm fine now. I mean, I still, like every parent, we doubt ourselves and all of that. And I've learned how to create a different level of balance now, having a business and doing all of that. But I'm going to tell you, the road was rough to work out the internal dialogue of I'm a better employee than I am a mom. That was such a hard internal messaging shift that I had to make. And so I just want to speak to the female high achievers who are moms who feel like I'm not enough. I'm not good at this. And you're unintentionally disconnecting with your family because you don't know what to do. Stop. Stop, pause, take a step back, figure out what's going on, figure out what that disconnect is, give yourself a ton of grace and spend time with your family. Yeah. Even if it doesn't look the way that you think it should look, it doesn't matter. Your kids just want you to be there with them.
Yeah. No, I think it's well said. And again, there are multiple situations where that also rings true. I mean, it's just the focus on being good enough, being enough, and giving time to those who need it, I think is applicable to a lot of different situations. And that's just such an important message. And I think it's back to the signs, as you mentioned, it's kind of the basis for a lot of what to watch out for. It's if you are starting to question those things, are you enough? Are you good enough? Are you good at what you're doing? Then something needs to shift and priority needs to shift.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I want to switch into talking about the purgatory. So you use the phrase professional identity purgatory. Please explain it to us. I'm so intrigued by this. I love the name. Like, let's talk about it.
I chose the word purgatory, and perfectly transparent, I'm not a religious person. I know enough about the concept to know that that's the word that I wanted, because I'm unfinished, and I wrote the book from being unfinished and in purgatory and in that kind of transformational space. And I didn't want to choose a word like transition or progress. I didn't want to have it be finished, because frankly, a lot of the books that I've read about career transition or all of those things, I don't think they're applicable, and they often have great happy endings with 5 steps how you get out of something that aren't situational to everyone who reads it. And again, you're going to find that even with my book. However, I wanted to show the messiness. I wanted to show the actual process that I'm going through, the questions that I'm asking myself, and what that looks like versus just a finished product. And I think more people are going through the unfinished piece of it and the messiness of it versus okay, I'm already finished and I've transformed and I'm complete. And so that's why I chose the word purgatory, because it really captured the feeling of I'm going through it. I'm going through it physically, emotionally, psychologically, and I'm okay with saying that. And back to what I said about social media is that we often celebrate the finished product. Don't ever show the work that led to that finished product. I wanted to kind of show that work. And again, I knew that I had to take a big step to be as vulnerable and transparent as I'm being in the book. And I was okay with that, because I think that that's how discussions like this one start to happen. And the more people just can say it out loud, the better. I didn't write this book to be a bestseller. I wrote it to start conversation. I really did. And to your earlier point about female high achievers, I'm getting a lot of feedback from men. And I know that men don't talk about it at this level a lot. And I don't necessarily want to be the flag bearer for this, but I want it to be at least a start for people to start having this type of conversation and what people are feeling and what does it mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And, I think I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but I think men get a bad rap a lot of times. I think that there is a messaging out there that the world is built for them and therefore nothing should be for them because everything is for them. And I think that there is some truth to that. However, I think that when you get to a certain point in your life and career, they are having these conversations. Like I have a number of male clients, probably in your age range, where we are having deep conversations about who am I and what am I even good at? And they've had very successful careers, And I'm sitting here like, why are you questioning this? Look at everything that you've done. What do you mean? Who are you? And I think it's because there is this idea, I would say, especially boomers, Gen X, elder millennials of, hey, dust it off and keep going.
Yeah.
We don't cry. We don't have feelings. We don't have this. And now you have an older generation of men who are feeling all the things and have no idea what to do with that. And I love that you're putting some voice to it and you're being so vulnerable about this is what I went through. I think that especially men in those higher level positions, I think they do need to hear this and they do need support in a different way. So I love that you're giving voice to this.
And I would ask those men who are your clients, are you talking to your friends about how you're feeling? Or are they just talking to you? Because what I'm finding is it's very easy to go talk to my therapist about the things that I'm going through. It's very easy to have these types of conversations. Am I having these same conversations with my friends? No, not really, because they're maybe in different positions. They may not want to get that deep with their feelings. And I think that's also the struggle too, is that you're right. Men are having these conversations, but I don't know if they're having them with the people who they need to have them with, and if they're getting the satisfaction from having them. And so that's what I love exploring too, is that, okay, where can I meet some of my current friends at this level to have these types of discussions? Because you are 100% right, Julia. The pushback I get is, well, you had it all together. You had a great career. You were very successful. You're doing this. And I have a hard time accepting all of that just based on where I am now, because back to our earlier discussion about success, I'm probably thinking about it in a different way than others may be. Somebody the other day I had a conversation with, and we were just talking about board stuff, that we're on a board together. And the person said to me, "You seem like you're at peace." And I said, "Funny, because I'm really not." And it wasn't, to really push back, but it was, "Hey, that's interesting. You think that, because I don't really feel like I am." And, but I was open enough to say that. And he said, "Well, you look like you're well put together, and that you have a lot going for you now, even in this stage of your life." And so I think it's just even that ability to say, you know what, I'm not okay right now, or I'm not at peace, or here's how I'm feeling, with a larger group of people who actually support you in your community.
Right. I think people really underestimate what's going on internally with the people around them. I've had a number of situations where I have realized now how people view me externally is wildly different than what is going on internally. And I think that's a high achiever thing. I think we're constantly trying to do more.
Right.
And trying to better ourselves, and it's never enough. We check the box, but then we give ourselves 4 more boxes to check, because it's just not enough. And I think the outside world is like, "Oh man, they do have it together, and they've got this, and they're doing this, and they're doing all these things." And internally, it's like we're imploding because we think we're not doing enough.
Right. I think the worst combination is a high achieving perfectionist, because right, me too, because again, you know how beautiful that is for a high achieving perfectionist. You're never going to be perfect, but you're always going to be in that cycle, and always going to be in that chase to get there. And so you'll do more, and you'll do more, and you'll do more. And the accolades will keep piling up and piling up, but you're never going to get to perfection. And you know that, and you know it. And it's you. The chase is so beautiful.
Got to get that dopamine,
No, you got to get it where you can. You got to get it where you can find it. And it's one quote I had in the book from somebody who I interviewed, who said her idealistic vision of the future is the best form of avoidance, because you can always keep planning for what the future is going to be like, but while avoiding the present. And that's the perfectionist kind of type A cycle, is that you can, the next thing is going to be so great that I don't have to worry about what's happening now. And I can avoid all of that because I'm planning for my ideal vision of the future. But again, that was a high achieving female who said that. And it was interesting just to hear that kind of frame on that issue.
Oh, I can relate to that. Oh man. Okay. Let's divert to something else. We don't need to unpack any of that at all.
I mean, this could go on for 2 hours, Julia.
It really could. It really could. We're touching on some things here, Geoff. We're touching on some things. Okay, so earlier you talked about needing to slow down after this merger happened. You left the position. So I think that this happens a lot when people lose a position, whether it's by choice or they're forced out of a position. A lot of people are going through layoffs right now. And this idea of slowing down and understanding this identity connection to work and all of that, like you've had probably a little bit more time to do that and understand that because you don't have the pressures of the full-time job to distract you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's very common when this happens. However, what if we're a busy professional? And this kind of goes back to some of the signs, but I think in a different way. Like, what does slowing down look like? Like, what can that busy professional who is very caught up in their work realistically do to start to understand their identity and make the connections and detach and do some of that work?
I think that the easiest thing is that, can you take some time for self-reflection? And that's not weeks, that's not months, that's a half hour or an hour during the day to get back to the question that I think you brought up earlier, is that who are you when you're not doing the thing that you're doing? When you're not doing the job, who are you? And that is to me, the pivotal question to begin that self-reflection. And I didn't do it. I mean, I self-reflected through therapy while I was working, but I didn't really do it. I thought it was for myself, but it was kind of also in that box checking thing where I know I need to work through some issues, but am I really doing this for myself? And so I'm trying to help people understand that even just a little bit of self-reflection where you really start digging into some of those things, asking some of those questions of who you are and how much you think about certain things and do all of that, that to me is slowing down, because it slows your mind down. If you can take that time just to slow your mind down from the process and the work to really dive deeper into yourself, I think that's the best place to start. And again, I know that's not the 5-step answer that probably people are looking for, but it's probably more important psychologically to do that than to get into a 5-step box checking mode of this is how I get out of this, or this is how I start to redefine myself. Because I just don't think that that's realistic if you haven't done the understanding of yourself first. And again, I started this book in a different place where it ended. And throughout the process, I realized that I had patternistic behavior throughout my entire career and throughout my entire life. And I'm just starting to realize this now when I sat down to write it. And again, I don't know that self-reflection would have helped along the way, but it wouldn't have hurt to say, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I moving from this place to this place and not evaluating what just happened, or not celebrating the ending, or not doing those things that people should do and thinking about why they're making certain decisions? And so again, it's a little bit more philosophical and psychological, but to me, that's the unlocker right there, is that psychological piece.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think too, if it needs to be something that is scheduled, schedule it.
Absolutely.
If you need support, and this is what I realized fairly recently, unfortunately, I wish I had realized it earlier. I need external accountability for a lot of things that I'm trying to do, because I just will not hold myself accountable for a lot of the reasons we talked about in this conversation. And so you mentioned therapy. I think therapy is a great way to start having some of this reflection. Having a coach, so many people have executive coaches and coaches to have these conversations and be able to connect some of those patterns. If your coach or therapist can't do that for you, then you need to find a new one. But I think when you're at a certain point in your career, there are going to be patterns that you have to recognize, because some of them are going to be healthy and they're going to help you get to the next level. But some of them are not, and they were created because of the situations that you were in and trying to be somebody you weren't. And now we got to work through that so that you're not carrying that with you, which then it changes your identity, because now your identity is locked in to this version of you that work has created.
Yeah.
So,
And I also too think that there's the buzz of I would say a big buzzword these days is lifelong learning. And there's a big trend around lifelong learning. And I would say I'm a lifelong learner, but I think people often equate that to not lifelong learning about themselves. It's more about, okay, I'm going to go back and explore this topic that I didn't explore before when I was at college or getting my MBA or doing whatever. And I think that is kind of the external tie to that instead of how are you being a lifelong learner about yourself. And to your point, that takes a little deeper exploration with someone like a therapist, like a coach, to unlock some of those things. And again, it's at the end of the day, if you're going to continue to work and you're going to be a better leader, if you know more about yourself, it's going to make you a better leader to others too, because you'll understand kind of their psyches a little bit better since you understand your own. So to me, it's a win-win. And I don't know, it took me a long time to get into therapy, but I absolutely love it.
Love that. Oh, I love that. So earlier we were talking about success and the different definitions and where it comes from. So what is your definition of success today? And how do you think it's different than probably 20 years ago?
This is the transparency in me. I haven't yet defined it, what success means for me today. And I'm on that path right now. What I know it's not is the old metrics that I used to measure it by when I was in career. I know it's not that. So the scoreboard's different. I'm kind of putting together the scoreboard as I go along now. So, for example, my wife and I launched a nonprofit a month ago, and we are looking at that and the parameters around that to what does that success in that environment look like? Not just for us, but for the people we are helping. And to me, that's a totally different frame than I'm used to, but something I need to get used to. And really, what does that look like? So, I mean, again, through the book and through doing things like that, I'm really exploring my values and my mission, and in kind of how is now my success tied to those values. I know that I want to make an impact on society. I know I want to do certain things that help people earlier in their career. Okay, well, and now I need to set parameters around that and change the scoreboard, as I mentioned, on what that looks like and what actually fulfills me. Success may be more fulfillment now than anything else. And I just have to be okay with that. And that has been the hardest thing, Julia, to be perfectly honest with you, is stepping away from those old metrics and really understanding what fulfillment feels like, what joy feels like, what meaningfulness feels like in a different type of path. And admittedly, it's a struggle, and I'm not there yet. And I'd be happy to touch base with you again on when I figure that out, on what success looks like. But again, it's a hard road, and it's even finding meaning in certain things and not getting into that check the box mentality and those old metrics that drive me absolutely crazy now. It's a journey.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Having to relearn is really hard. The older you get, the harder it becomes to relearn different things. I went through a very similar, I had to unlearn, relearn a lot of bad habits and mindsets and all this that I took from, my full-time positions. And it's a journey. It's a road, and it takes a long time. So
yeah, you mentioned dopamine earlier. You mentioned dopamine earlier, real quickly, and I think that's the thing, is that it's hard to identify where those dopamine rushes are going to be, and if you still need them in the frequency that you used to, or can they be more infrequent and bigger because you believe in where you're getting them from a little bit more.
Yes. Oof. Okay. Geoff, that was a perfect way to end this. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was such a wonderful conversation. I feel like we definitely could have gone on much longer, but I really appreciate you sharing your experience and your perspective with us.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome. If you would like to learn more about Geoff or pick up a copy of Embracing Your Own Purgatory, you can connect with him. I'm going to leave all of his information in the blog post for this episode. And if you enjoyed this conversation, I would love for you to subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes. And you can also leave a rating or a review. It helps other people find these conversations as well. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, you control your career.